Hello everyone, this is Wayne May with Treasure Earth. Thanks for joining me here today. I might get to some metal detecting today, but I've got a special guest, a very good friend of mine, Marc Steiner's here. Not only one of the most genuine people I've ever met, but a wizard with a camera. So we're going to go over some camera stuff today and just see what his advice is on some of the shots that I would like to do in some of the future videos. So stay with me. Okay.
So, start us off, Wayne.
Well, my question is, I'm shooting, and I have been shooting with my phone. Mm-hmm. Most of the footage is with this phone. Mm-hmm. Now, this is the S10 Plus, and it's handy, it's fast, is why I use it. Of course, I'm not usually with a tripod, I'm out in the field, so this is my sort of go-to. So, I guess what's your advice on just shooting with the phone all the time?
I think these days phones have gotten so good that the vast majority of people will not benefit from getting a very expensive camera setup. I think that's the beauty of phones, is that it's very just point and shoot. You hit a button, you're recording something, you have usable content right at your fingertips, and then you can share it immediately if you want to. So I think a lot of people benefit from that. And a lot of my friends ask me, like, Mark, I'm looking to get my first camera. My budget is $500, $600. What camera should I get? And I said, honestly, your phone beats anything under the $1,000 price point. Like, you're not finding a camera that's better than the phone at that price point. If you want to get something better than your phone, you're looking at minimum probably $1,200, and realistically more like $1,500, $1,600. And then you start getting into full frame. And like, if you spend more than $2,000, yes, that's a clear difference. But I think for the vast majority of people, phones have gotten so good, there's no real need to get a big camera these days.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, I guess my next question would be, this is a few years old now.
Yep.
Now, what is the difference between this and the one that's out now, the current S21 or whatever
so
it is?
The current Samsung, the current Samsung is S23. The S24 is coming out in 3 or 4 months' time. I'd say probably the biggest is more like bigger sensors, so better low light capabilities, better just color capabilities and whatnot. The ability to shoot higher resolutions, so now they're up to 8K, which is kind of crazy. I wouldn't shoot in that, but like if you want that, it's there. I would say also like more intense frame rates, so you can get that slow motion, that 60, 120, 240 frames per second. That's quite helpful. But I think mostly you're just seeing those bigger sensors with better glass, and then a lot of more post-processing, so you see how the image can be improved just with the software on the phone already. So that, I think, is probably the biggest differentiator. That's why these phones have gotten so good and can compete with a big camera setup like that, is because they're basically a computer attached to a camera, whereas that is only a camera. So this is doing a lot of like onboard processing to make that image look really good.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you'd recommend jumping from this one up to the new one rather than going out and buying a camera like yours. Which one is that you're shooting with now?
I would recommend buying a new phone camera over an actual camera, unless you're going to use this in a very unless you're making a lot of money and using this as a professional tool on a daily basis. Right. The phone is more than good enough for what you need. What we're shooting on right now is the Sony a7S III. I have a 24-70 2.8 GM on there, and you are listening through a microphone that I got in Japan, actually. I think this is the ECM1. I forget the exact title because Sony has awful naming schemes, but yeah, that is the setup we have going today.
Okay.
Yeah.
One more question on the phones.
Yes.
So I'm a Samsung fan. Now, you use an Apple.
I do.
Now, with the new Apple and the new Samsung, is there a huge difference? Enough for me, sort of just wandering around the fields and in the woods, filming the way I do.
I think these days there's not a huge differentiator. Like, you know, year on year, there are some things that each phone does better than others. I'd argue that the iPhone tends to do video just a little bit better most times, but I really like what Samsung and Google have been doing with, like, you know, the Galaxy line and the Pixel line. They've done a lot of good things with that post-processing that we were talking about. Samsung has the higher resolution sensors. They have 200 megapixels now. They have more zoom sensors as well, so you can have those lenses that go further. The iPhone is limited to that. So honestly, like, as much of an Apple fanboy as I am a tech nerd first, and I can admit when Apple is not doing their best. And I honestly am not the biggest fan of the most recent iPhone because I was really let down with all the stuff they'd done. Like, the tech wasn't there, the cameras were a bit of a letdown. They touted it as this amazing thing, and it wasn't. They kind of lied about certain things, and I wasn't happy about that. So the current S23 Ultra and the next gen S24 are looking to be really, really good. So I'm excited about that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I'll definitely consider upgrading.
Yes. Yeah.
Before it's too late. So the next thing is the microphone. You were talking about the microphone here.
Yeah.
Now, I'm getting a lot of wind noise when it comes down to this. Now, I've tried certain things. You know, I put the phone in my hat while I'm filming, trying to cut that down. Not always applicable and doesn't always work.
Yeah.
I've wrapped, you know, cloth around it. I did buy one here. Now, this is just a wireless microphone. Have you ever used one of these before?
I have, yes.
I don't know if you can see it, but this port just plugs into the phone here. And this is brand new. Just got it. It was for the trip I just went on, but I never actually used it, which I probably should have because I was actually getting quite a lot of wind noise. But would this be enough to sort of eliminate some of that wind noise?
What I found, especially on smaller mics like these ones, is that the wind noise is more pronounced. The wind, like the wind protection you have on there, will help eliminate a little bit, but it's still noticeable. And that's one of the things, like, I tend not to shoot outdoors because of wind noise like that. Like, if I'm vlogging or whatnot, I'll try my best to find some sort of sheltered environment because that wind noise is just really hard to get out. The AI processing that they have on editing apps now has gotten really, really good at eliminating that and then reintroducing your voice at a higher level that sounds pretty natural. But wind is just one of those things that's really, really hard to get rid of. So the cleaner the environment and the quieter and less windy it is, the better. There's not that much you can do unless you're putting a crap ton of wind protection on a mic. And in this kind of setup, it's just not really possible. Yeah.
Okay. Well, I noticed that because I've got a couple of good where I'm out in the field and I think, well, that's a really good take, and I get it back to editing and you can't hear half of what I'm saying.
It's the worst.
And but I have to use it anyways, right?
Yeah.
And hopefully everyone's just turning the volume up a little to hear what I'm saying. But so what would you recommend if I'm just using the phone? Is it just to stay in the sheltered areas while I'm doing the intros?
That's as it's more the environment than the microphone. Because, like, you know, right now we're just using an iPhone, and honestly, like, your phone recording app is more than good enough. I think it's more about how close it is to your mouth. That's probably the number one most important thing, because you're just going to get better sounding audio when it's closer to you. Okay. So that's one of the things I don't like about these mics is, like, you have to usually put them on a shirt or something, and then your shirt rustles and the wind gets to it, and that can irk me a little bit. I tend to use either shotgun microphones or like boom microphones in a studio setting. Right. But I'm not usually out and about unless the client specifically asks for that. So, yeah.
Whereas 99% of my stuff
is outdoors. So we shoot very differently.
Well, I was in Mexico and coming off the ocean, the wind was just absolutely wicked. So I had to go into some ruined houses to actually do the intro. And you probably could still hear the hum. Yeah. So I just have to be aware of that. Now, going back to the new phones, do they have any sort of wind suppressors, or does that...
Again, that's more on the post-processing side. So I'm sure they do quite a bit to make it sound as good as possible. But the issue with that post-processing, if it's really windy, you can sound really tinny or far away as they try and compensate for that wind. So they artificially negate the wind and artificially bring up your voice. So it really is a hit or miss. So again, it's just like getting it as good as possible when you're recording. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Well, that's awesome.
Cool.
We'll put that to the test one day in the wind anyways, just to see.
Yeah.
Because around here it's going to get windy.
Yes. Yeah.
Just
exactly.
the way it goes.
Exactly.
Okay. So I just wanted to talk to you about lighting. Now you set the camera up here.
Yes.
We've got the light right in front of us.
Yep.
So the light's behind the camera.
Yep.
So we've got front lit.
Yes.
Now, is that the best recommendation?
I think it depends on what you're doing. Like in general, yes. So what I like to do is I'll take my hand and I'll just kind of do a 360 and see how the light is going to hit my hand. And as you can see, like the hand is fully lit right now. So if you're standing exactly where my hand is, you're gonna be nice and like softly lit because we have the largest light source in the world, the sun.
Right.
So that's nice, good, soft light. And we're shooting at a decent time where it's not super harsh. It's getting more and more soft, which is nice. And because of that, it'll look better. So it depends on what you want. If you're staying stationary and you have an actual light source, you can get some like diagonal lighting, and that'll be nice because you'll get some nice like Rembrandt lighting. So you like half your face is lit and then a little bit of like shadow on the face to give it a little bit of definition and contrast. It just depends what look you're going for. If you're outdoors in general, I would just kind of put the sun right in front of you and it's easy and you look great. Yeah.
Okay, that's awesome. Because I haven't been doing that. I'm shooting every single direction.
Yeah.
And sometimes that's due to the wind as well, right? I'm trying to get out of the wind that way. But that's good to know. Yeah. And we got the nice low sun now coming into the fall here, so that's good.
Yeah.
Okay, so I have a couple other questions.
Mm-hmm.
This camera here, this is a imitation GoPro, right? Apex Cam. I chose that name because that was the name of a former company I had. Mm-hmm. Now, this shoots in 4K. Now, this goes onto the shaft of the, typically the shaft of the metal detector as it's moving through. Now, I guess my question is, how good are these compared to the GoPros anyways?
I think it really depends. I would have to see footage side by side, but in my experience and my knowledge, a lot of the knockoff brands tend to have significantly worse footage because they'll do that marketing, right? A lot of people like to say, 4K, like that means high quality. 4K is just resolution of the image. That image could be really, really bad. So, if you have something that's bigger, it doesn't necessarily mean it's better, right? Like a sports car is arguably better than a Jeep, right? It just depends on what you're trying to do. But when I have seen like footage like the GoPros, they do have better quality sensors. They are better in low light. They have better colors. They tend to do things a little bit better because they're a legitimate, like more brand name who invests a lot in that image quality. Right. Whereas a lot of these other cameras, they just pick whatever is the cheapest sensor that they can make a profit on and they put it in there and it's capable of shooting 4K, but it doesn't necessarily mean it's the best image.
Okay. Now, usually that shot there is usually just going down to the coil onto the ground.
Yeah.
Now it's 3 feet away from it, so it's not doing any sort of real distance work.
Yeah.
And I don't use the sound of it anyways. That usually comes in and I overlap it with a different sound. But so is that good enough just to use on a camera like this? Should I go and get a GoPro?
No, I don't think for like a POV shot that you need the highest quality image on planet Earth, right? Like I don't think this is a critical thing where you're like giving this footage to the company brand being like, we're showing off. No, you're just doing this because that's what you want. I think having a different angle in this, like a different viewpoint, is far more interesting than it being the highest quality image on planet Earth.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
Well, that's good. Well, I'll keep it then.
Yeah.
I'll keep that with it. Now, going to the GoPros, I do actually have a GoPro here. Now, this is one I purchased not long ago, only a couple months ago. And this is, again, point of view from, obviously, the backpack. So it's coming from here. And it has good, really nice
wide,
open. It's wide for
field
sure.
view,
It's really cool that way. Now, have you ever used, this is the GoPro, this is the Mini.
Yeah.
Have you used GoPros a lot?
I have not used GoPros a lot. I've edited GoPro footage before, but like it's not something that I keep in my repertoire, because even though I've really wanted one for the longest time, I just know that I can't justify the cost because I would use it so infrequently. It would be such a niche shot for me that it wouldn't be worth me getting one. Yeah.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
I have seen this on other detectorists doing that, and they're actually getting some really cool footage.
Yeah, no, the GoPros can really give you a cool image, especially if that's like what you want, like for adventuring and whatnot. Again, we shoot very different things,
We
so
do, for sure. We do, for sure.
we have different requirements of what we want out of our cameras. But yeah, the GoPros are great for what you do, for sure.
Well, this one, it was great, actually. I got some great footage when I went outside of Canada, is where I tested it. But I found the battery was the only issue. So what I had to do was just put a secondary charger in here and link it. Now, of course, what that does, unfortunately, if it's raining, your flaps open, and so it's a good weather charging system. I've noticed. Now, do they have longer life batteries? I guess you don't know the GoPros.
Again, there's the limitation of form factor, right? Like, there's only so much battery you can put in something that small. So that's always going to be a limitation of cameras of that size. You kind of got to pick and choose the exact shot you want. That's not the camera you're going to set up for, 4 hours and expect it to last the entire time. But, for what it is, it's really, really good. And I think, again, like you said, you have the workaround with a battery bank there, so you can make it last longer when it's not raining and whatnot. But again, it's such a small camera. There's only so much battery you can put in there before you have to think about all the other aspects of a camera.
True. And I know I'm asking a lot of the microphones and the phones and the GoPros and things like that. Well, that's all the cameras I use here. Mm-hmm. Now, I've wanted to use this Canon as well. So this is a T5i.
Yeah.
I've used this for a million pictures for sure. This is a great camera for that. I've got an 18 to 270 on here, which is great. It just gives me that
everything.
Yeah, it really gives me a great field. But it's a bit bulky, so it changes it. Now, I guess it goes back to what you said about buying a camera rather than a phone.
Yeah.
So really replacing this is probably not.
Yeah, again, if you find yourself using the smaller things, and again, ease of use, this is definitely more cumbersome, right? Like, you have to get the SD card, you have to shoot everything, you have to get your settings right, you have to get probably an additional microphone, it makes it even more bulky. All these things add up. It's like, what do you value? Do you value that extra bit of quality over convenience? It depends on what you're shooting. For what you are doing, I don't think it would make sense to be holding a big-ass camera for hours on end as you're out and about adventuring, right? That would be a lot. Like, even when I'm out and about vlogging, I'm only doing it for, 30 seconds to 2 minutes at a time, dispersed. Like, I'm not holding that behemoth for a long, that's ridiculous. So it really just depends on what you want. And I think the convenience of the phone, I've been doing that a lot more recently, honestly. Like, when I was traveling to Tokyo, I was majority using my phone just because it was so convenient. The image quality is great, and especially on these wider angle shots where I don't need a lot of depth of field, they're very comparable to a good camera like that. It's right there.
Okay. Well, a little bit comes into the lazy factor too for me, because sometimes I'll do it'll be indoors. I'll just be doing it'll be definitely regulated as far as lighting and everything goes, but I still throw my phone up there, and that's probably a little bit of laziness. Even a still shot on the outside, I'm not using the bigger phone. I just keep defaulting, and I know you're a camera guy, so I don't know if that's if I have time to do it, should I take that extra few minutes and use a different camera?
I think it depends on what your brand is. Me being a camera tech guy, I feel like if I'm recording on the phone, it doesn't quite align with what people know me for, right? People know me for higher quality, production quality, because that's quite literally my job and my niche. But I think, if I wasn't in that, just throwing up the phone is so easy, so convenient, and it's become so normalized in the age of Instagram and TikTok and YouTube that you don't really need all this fancy camera. This is the great equalizer. So I really think that you don't need to worry about a big kick-ass setup. I would say invest in lighting more than investing in a new camera, because lighting is probably the biggest factor in making your image quality look good. The camera, less so.
Now, if we go to lighting, and I'm going to pick your brain about that too now, just for a second. When the light goes down and we don't have that sun anymore,
Yeah.
I've got some images in the videos. Would you recommend getting a light for some of those? You know, you're in dusk now. Now, again, I'm trying to get the feel of that sometimes.
Yeah.
That we're going into the dark clouds or this sort of thing. Now, is there a light out there that's light and versatile that would
Meet
sort
your
of
needs?
go along with what I'm doing?
I think there's one that comes to mind for me. It is, probably the size of a thick, like lengthwise, probably the size of a credit card. It's quite thick, but it is very, very versatile. I love it. When I'm traveling, I bring it everywhere with me in case I need to use a light.
Okay.
It's called the Aperture MC. They now have the MC Pro as well. So it gives you a little bit more weather sealing and weatherproofing, so it can take a little bit more. It's a little bit more durable. The light out of that thing is great. But, again, it depends on form factor. It depends on what you want. Like, maybe, that's bigger than a GoPro. Maybe that's not what you're looking for.
Right. And how does a light like that mount?
So it comes with an attachment. It comes with like a little tripod mount similar to your GoPro setup. So you can put it on different things. Or what I tend to do is just hold it for what I do.
Right.
But again, different things. Yeah.
Well, and that would probably work for me. Certainly during the intros and conclusions of the video, I don't see that being a problem.
Yeah.
And I could attach it certainly to the shaft of the detector if I'm doing
you could. The other thing I love about it is that it has magnets on the back, so you could just stick it to anything metal, which is really, really great.
Oh, that sounds awesome. Offhand, what does that run as cost-wise?
The Aperture MC goes for $90 these days, and the MC Pro goes for just under $200 these days, I believe.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, something to look at for sure. I think that's actually all my questions I had for you as far as I'm trying to improve my video and content and all of this sort of thing. So I think that's all my questions, and of course you answered it absolutely
I try my
perfectly,
best.
for sure. So that's all I need. We're going to do some detecting now.
Cool.
And maybe you can help me with some of the shots in this field behind us here, just to see maybe what the best height is and the lighting and all that. So
We can definitely do that.
let's try it.
Let's do it.
All right. Now this is the Deus 2, and I haven't actually mounted the mount for it, for the actual GoPro on it. But this is kind of the good lighting for detecting. So I guess my question is to Marc. What's the best? What footage is the best here for showing what I'm doing on the ground, me explaining something, the detector more so than me, where I am as far as geographically goes, and sort of what backgrounds I have. So I guess these are my questions.
Yeah. I would say that like this background with the trees is really nice, especially if you get like something a little more telephoto, so you can kind of blur it out more from my angle. That would look good. I think that would look the best, honestly, just because like the yellow against the blue sky looks really, really good.
Now, you mentioned telephoto.
Yes.
Does that create a bigger depth of field?
Yes, so the longer the lens, the more compression you're going to get, so the more blurry the background regardless of your f-stop or aperture. So it'll look good when you zoom in like that. It'll just be more blurred regardless, which is really good.
Okay.
In terms of like the shots of what you're getting, I think honestly what I would say is just what's more important is the different shots that you can splice together. Just having different angles would look better. You just more to work with is always nice, especially in this kind of scenario. So you have a wider shot, then you can go to like the tight of the POV of the detector, and then like you just got different shots to work with. I think is more important than one solid shot. Yeah.
That sounds like more of a editing
It is. It definitely
It
is.
sounds more like an art.
Yes.
than actually filming. So the footage that I'm getting,
Yeah.
you've watched a couple of them, but,
Yeah.
and sometimes I get a worm's eye view and a bird's eye view or whatever that is.
Mm-hmm.
Those are all fine what I'm doing.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
You know, sounds to me like I just need a little bit more editing.
Yes, I think the magic
And,
happens in editing for sure.
and probably a different phone is what you're saying.
I mean, work with what you got. You know, the
Right.
best camera is the one that you have on you, right? So use what you have, and I think that's more important. The fact that you're just creating something, I think, is the most important thing.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, we're definitely doing that. As far as the detector goes and sort of those camera views, actually, those were my questions. I don't know if you had anything to add to it, because you answered my questions in about 3 sentences. There you go. It's up to me now to sort of try to get the shots and the stills and the action and whatever, and try to splice that together in something that's appealing.
Yes, exactly. That's always the hardest part, right? Like, it's always, shooting I find is quite easy. It's the putting it together that I always find is the more difficult part. But yeah, I think what you're doing is great.
Well, it's exciting actually when you put all those things together.
You get to see the final product.
I quite like editing
Yeah.
it actually, although it's probably taken me twice as long than anyone else. But, a couple of good coffees and just sit down and start editing this thing. I really enjoy that too. So ultimately, those are my questions.
Yeah.
Actually.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad I could help.
Yeah. Well, why don't we end it there as far as sort of your advice and definitely your input is just absolutely, well, I can't tell you how much I appreciate it.
Yeah, no problem.
For sure.
This is my wheelhouse. I'm always here to nerd out and help anyone out.
Well, that's good because right now we're going to switch and you're going to do some metal detecting. So.
Well, we shall see how that goes.
So I'm going to use small motions on the coil. Now, when it comes off of the target, it just, obviously the sound goes. So the front of the target is here. Now I go 90 degrees to that. And then I find out, sort of, I can triangulate where this target is. So this ground's a little bit tough, but what you want to do is dig it on 3 sides. I'll go to this one so you can see it. And then just flip that over. It flips over like a box lid. That way the grass is still attached and it still a strong signal. It's a big target. I normally wouldn't dig this, but we'll dig it for now. I'll need the pin pointer, which I gave you. You can use a small digger once you get into this sort of position here. Of course, as a good detectorist, I've left it in the truck. But it's out. So this is a piece of tin. It's from construction. It's probably part of a roof or something. But that was that signal. So on the detector, it was coming in about mid-70s. I normally don't dig that. And because it was a kind of a funny signal there, quite close to the surface here, so it was telling me it was kind of a bigger target than a coin would be. But that's what it is. But that's kind of the technique you would use on a target that you find that you want to actually dig. So I'm going to hand it over to Marc now, and he's going to do some metal detecting for the first time. Okay, so that coil needs to be just skimming along the top of the grass there. Now the sensitivity on this detector is set about 90. So it'll actually go punching quite deep. So depending on the size of the target, of course.
I'm getting an 87. Yeah, somewhere between 85 and 87. And the noise is quite loud, so I think we're going to dig this up.
Okay. So what you want to do is go a bit 90 degrees to that. Okay. And see if you can't find where the corner of where you need to dig is. What we do is we just use our foot to kick that over. And then you've got your hole that you can check now. So this is where your pinpointer comes out. And
Ooh.
well, there's something in there. Now, the quicker the beeps happen on the pinpointer, closer it is to the target. So you're probably 2 inches away from where those beeps were.
Okay. Something.
All right, well, so don't be afraid to put that in the dirt and move it around wherever.
Aha! Oh my goodness! There we go.
Looks like you found a penny.
There we go.
So that was a good signal. It may have been on its side because it was acting a little bit funny, but looks like your first find is a coin. I would say that's a good omen somehow.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah.
All right, so we're going to call it a day here. So much appreciated. I thank Marc here for helping me out with some of this camera stuff. A quick lesson for him in metal detecting. Found a penny, which is awesome. I'd say that's a good omen. First find ever metal detecting is a penny. But what an absolutely gorgeous day. We got really lucky here with it. And thanks for joining us. Hopefully you guys learned something as well. And I'll put some of this advice to the test coming up in the next year here. Thanks.